Hi Tracy. Thanks for joining us. We're thinking about doing December differently, about how we can do practical things to make a difference to those around us. And one of the things I've been thinking about quite a lot recently is about areas around death, where people are bereaved, and this might be the first Christmas they have maybe without a loved one, or maybe it's a situation like people, similar situation to myself actually, maybe a bit separated, or lots of reasons why Christmas this year might feel lonely. And added to the fact that we're right in the middle of a pandemic and Boris has altered the rules, again, there might be reasons why people feel quite lonely, really. Um, you're very involved in work around bereavement and thinking about things like loss and stuff. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about why you got into that and how that's become something of an area of interest for you?
I think having some personal losses quite early on in my life led me to be quite interested in the impact of bereavement really on people. And then as I got a little bit older, I experienced a number of different losses in quite quick succession as well. And I did notice that whilst they're losing somebody that you love is obviously very challenging and very difficult, you do gain quite a lot of insights both of yourself and human nature when you go through something as extreme as losing somebody who you love. And that led me to be generally interested on a personal level, I think. And the area in which I work involves loss in a different way, but loss and change is a part of social work all the time. So it's an area anyway that I work in, um, and I've started the Pool Death Cafe a couple of years ago to bring people together to share experiences of loss and bereavement, which I've found really interesting and really uplifting as well.
I think it's interesting because we often think about loss and bereavement and things, and there seems to be, for some reason, Christmas seems to be one of those times when people when it suddenly becomes more acute and noticeable. Sometimes is that something you would sort of go along with?
Yeah. I think Christmas is a particularly difficult time because it's in normal times, and perhaps this year is going to be different. But in normal times, it's a time of gathering. It's of whether it's friends and family. It's a time of gathering back together, and I think that makes a loss more evident because there's a spare place at the table, or perhaps you're at a different table. The loss becomes more evident, and I think there's something about this time of year which is quite sensory. Really, it's quite triggering in lots of different ways. The smells, the sights, the sounds. I mean, some people have had very difficult experiences of losing somebody at this period of time, and that is incredibly difficult. I think because you've got the juxtaposition of everybody assuming that you're going to be happy at Christmas, and then perhaps you feeling like the bottom's dropped out of your world, and that can be that can be a very lonely place to be if you're feeling different to everybody else and different to the portrayal of what Christmas is, really.
And I guess there's something about um, that idea that Christmas makes sometimes accentuates or makes a loss that's happened more evident. And actually, often it's not only if it's just in the Christmas season, but often the first Christmas without somebody or the first Christmas in a new situation. That I think that image is quite a powerful one of the first Christmas with a spare place at the table, or the first Christmas around a different table. I think is it's quite a profound thing because actually as families, we have our rituals, our routines, our what we do, and that idea that somehow because of death or bereavement or some other loss like divorce or separation or estrangement or whatever it is, that actually our normal is disrupted, and anything that disrupts our normal can be tough, especially the first time you have to go through a first. is difficult. If someone is going through a first Christmas without somebody, or a first Christmas in new circumstance, or a first Christmas, yeah, of a new season, would you have any advice or thoughts or anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I think acknowledge that this is going to be difficult. Don't expect too much from yourself. It, it is likely to be quite painful to be going through a Christmas which is so different than what you would normally go through in experience. Um, that doesn't mean that you can't, that there might not be sometimes some parts of it that you enjoy, but acknowledge the fact that it's going to be different, acknowledge that it may be difficult for you, um, and build in some time for yourself, perhaps, to remember that person, or even remember those Christmases gone before, if it's a different sort of loss, like the loss through a divorce or separation, or through COVID and not being able to be together. It's okay to spend some time thinking about how things were and recognizing that they're different this year. But if it's a loss through a death, and it is the first year, can be really positive to do something that marks that. Just a few moments. Can be traditional things like lighting a candle, or it could be playing a person's favorite songs. Um, my dad loved Johnny Cash, and I can't not hear some Johnny Cash without now smiling to myself and thinking about him when I hear it. Um, some people do make sure they get lots of photos out. It's okay to mark the that occasion. It's okay to mark that person as well, and acknowledge fully that you loved them and that you missed them. So whatever's personal to you that might work. So setting aside a little bit of time to remember them and mark the loss of them, I think is important. But also talking to friends and family, and letting friends and family know it's okay to talk about the way things were, or the person that's died. It's okay to mention a name you'd quite like to be able to talk to them about, about some other Christmases or some funny things that have happened. Just people get very anxious about upsetting you, and perhaps even more so over the Christmas period. So you can help them to help you by giving them permission to talk about the person that's died, by starting a conversation with them about that. There are a few little practical things you can do that may be helpful. So one of the things, what I was trying to say, is scheduling in some time to approach the pain of grief, and it doesn't need to be very long. And this is a difficult one because sometimes our natural inclination is to move away from something that's painful, but just turning towards it, and recognizing that pain can actually be quite helpful. Um, there isn't anything that's going to make it not painful. Um, but there are things that can make it easier, and turning towards the pain briefly can be really useful in that you feel that you've marked it and you feel that you've connected again with that person, because grief's about love that you can't show, and that's incredibly painful at times.
That's a really profound way of thinking about grief, actually. I really like that. And I was also thinking that sometimes we're grieving, but sometimes we know other people who are either grieving or they're on their own, or we don't really know quite what they're feeling actually, but we know that for whatever reason they haven't got people around, or maybe it's even just the COVID thing. And just
Mm.
thinking too, is there any ways that you maybe could think of that we could maybe work out ways that maybe we could include or be creative about connecting well with each other, and maybe just walking gently and lovingly alongside those for whom this is yeah, as you said, either a Christmas with an empty place at the table or a Christmas around a different table.
I think Christmas Day is one day, but this whole period of the next 10 or 12 days are very important. And some people may go quite a long time without seeing people, particularly if they're living alone. So if you do know somebody who's living alone at this time, and perhaps you don't know whether they've experienced a loss this year, but you know that that COVID has meant that it's going to be a very different Christmas for them. Over the period of the next 10 days, try and check in with the people that you know are living alone, and just connect with them, talk with them, see how they're doing. People that are in your network, but maybe just towards the outside of your network, you might not always think about. Um, Make that little bit of extra effort to contact somebody. You don't need it can just be a phone call, just so that people don't feel alone. Or it can be we're all allowed to go for walks, and walking is really useful for our mental health as well. So just making that extra time to check in with somebody that you know may well be alone at Christmas. So it doesn't mean that you have to see them on Christmas Day or something, but just acknowledging that that you care about them, and that sometimes it's just about making that a little bit more effort, really. Phone calls are really good. We've got video calls now as well. So, um, but if there is somebody that you know has a specific loss, either experienced this year, or somebody that you know is still hurting in some way, you know, definitely make that extra effort to see them. It doesn't take a lot to make somebody feel an awful lot better.
I think one of the amazing things with all sorts of pain actually is that there's sometimes when it just feels more acute, but actually it is that thing you say sometimes. It is just sometimes somebody, maybe just giving your arm a squeeze, or a grin, or just a sort of a knowing look, or just sometimes the small things can just make you feel like somebody else gets it, somebody else cares, that yeah, someone else know. I think just that somebody else knows how I'm feeling and understands is a
You
massive
have to, yeah.
thing. Yeah, and yeah, we're very British. We don't quite know how to do that sometimes, but yeah, I guess there's
We
something
have
about
to have our pain recognized. It's a, I don't know why, but it's some sort of human thing. Well, I guess we're social creatures, and we need that. We need to be understood, and we need that connection, and we need particularly the big things in our lives to be recognized and seen to make sense of them, I think sometimes.
and valued and taken seriously, and yeah, and
Validated, I think.
validated. That's probably the word I meant. Yeah,
Yeah, that we feel that we're not on our own with this, that other people feel like this in this circumstance,
Mm,
and that we're not alone, and we are. I think that connection helps you feel cared about in a very genuine way, doesn't it? That
yeah,
click, that recognition that you're
yeah.
talking about, that arm squeeze or that eye contact. Or
So to conclude, to come into land, I guess, as they say, if you're experiencing some form of loss, whether that's through bereavement, COVID, or some other personal circumstance, you're saying about remembering, taking time to remember, taking time to take seriously the how you felt, and actually even the being brave enough to turn towards the pain actually is something that can be helpful, healthy, and healing. I think is that right?
yeah,
Yeah. And but also, if you know someone in your circle, you're saying about making that extra effort to reach out, to listen, to love, to work out some way of even making a phone call to support and help them. Is that what? Yeah.
can make a real difference to somebody to help them feel connected to the world again.
Brilliant. So yeah, so some really good practical bits of advice of actually loss at Christmas, and coping with loss at Christmas is one of those big things that's so rarely talked about. And so we wanted to sort of include that in our doing December differently. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing all that you've shared. And while you're here, do you want to do a cheeky advert for the next Zoom Death Cafe, or when or do it's going to be?
Yes, well, the best way to find out when the next date is going to be is to look at the Facebook page of Pool Death Cafe. Whether we'll run one in January on Zoom or whether we'll be in lockdown, who knows what's going to happen in the future. It's making life very difficult to plan for. I
It is indeed.
particularly prefer to do it face to face, so that would always be my preference. But yeah, if you keep an eye on the Facebook page of Pool Death Cafe, then the next date will be on there, but likely to be towards the end of January.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andy.